Welcome to No Stage, Just a Chair. I'm Brian, and this is me trying to figure things out without pretending I already know how. If I sound foolish, that means it's working. Music sounds a little 80s? Good. I was basically raised on synths and questionable hair choices. And if any of this sounds familiar, pull up a chair. I started playing the piano when I was 4 years old. It's around the same time that I started playing baseball, and I did all the things that a 4-year-old did. Rode my bike, fell and skinned my knee, did all the crazy things. But one of the things I started doing was started playing the piano. And I can still remember pretty vividly, we had this big, huge piano, like big, tall, like you got, this may or may not make sense to you guys, but this is part of my like formative memory is they're like these little console pianos. And then there are these big, they call them upright grands. And it's this big upright piano that's, as I sit there, it was this much taller than I was. And my mom had this white kitchen timer. And it was this weird little timer that had this little melted spot on it. And that melted spot set at 20 minutes. And I can remember my mom setting the timer for 30 minutes, setting it on top of the piano. And I would sit there and I would practice for those 30 minutes. And that went on for years. Same little white timer. And I would spend the first 10 minutes working on scales and cadences. And the next 20 minutes working on whatever song I was learning for that week, whatever I was working on, whatever I was developing, whatever skill. And playing songs was always fun. Scales and cadences was never fun. It was ritual, routine. It was repeated. It was just this activity that I didn't get. It's the most boring version of music. 1, 4, 1, 5, 1. Same thing. And I might change the key, but it was still always the same things. 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, 5, 7, 1. I didn't get it. It was 4. And I didn't see how it mattered. Shapes, patterns. Same movement repeated over. And I quietly endured it because that was the agreement. So my teacher asked me to do, so I did it. Lots of things I loved, lots of things I enjoyed, but a few things that I just didn't. And I did them because the timer was running, and that was the deal. And as time passed, started to see that there was a bigger goal than the week. There was a bigger goal than the song. There was a skill that was quietly developing. There was an ability it was quietly developing. And what I didn't know then, but I know now, is that I wasn't just practicing, I was being built. Songs, scales, cadences, muscle memory. And as I got older, 30 minutes became an hour. And I'm still sitting there with that same white plastic kitchen timer that if I could do it, if I could, I'd go back in time and I would steal that kitchen timer and have it now. Just because it became just part of the fabric of what music was for me. It was this sentimental object that I associate with those rituals and routines and those practice sessions. And those sessions that weren't just hours, but they were hundreds of hours and became thousands of hours and became tens of thousands of hours. And a few months ago, I sat down and I did a little bit of math, and I think that I've probably got in excess of 20,000 hours sitting at the keyboard of a piano. 30 minutes became an hour. Started doing piano contests. I won Critics Circle, which was a award. I won senior recitals as an underclassman. I started winning things. But the truth is, whenever I say that, it's not me bragging, because the truth is I didn't really care. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm wildly competitive. And I loved winning, but I didn't really see anything that mattered in it. It didn't really move the needle. It didn't really make me love it anymore. It was just a box that I was checking. Still doing scales and cadences, still learning songs, still memorizing songs. The songs became longer. The songs became more intense. And it became more songs at a time. And the work kept compounding. And I kept not understanding what it was compounding into. What was it compounding towards? And I had no idea. And that's the part that nobody talks about. And it's this idea that I really love and hate all at the same time. It's the long middle, which sounds kind of silly. Sounds like an incomplete thought. But I want you to think about skills. With skills, there is this long middle. There's this long middle that you're not sure what it's trying to accomplish. You might have an idea, but the truth is the idea is incomplete. I thought it was leading to classical music, which is what I did. I thought it was leading to classical music. I thought it was something cool that I could do. I didn't really imagine being on stage in front of people. I didn't really imagine it in that way, but those things started to happen. But when I got to about 20 and I stopped playing classical music and I started playing by ear and I started writing and I started playing trying to play rock and roll. And truthfully, I did it really badly because I was just this little kid who played the piano, and I still felt like a little kid who played the piano even at 20. But I started playing badly. I started singing along with playing, and I started doing all those things again really badly. But I can remember this moment. Started doing more and more recording sessions, and I was in Atlanta, Georgia for a recording session or actually a songwriting session. And I'm in a room with some really talented writers. And as we're talking through the song, as we're planning it, as we're thinking through it, as we're brainstorming it, as we're playing over the chord structure, the progression, trying to figure out what the idea is, there's this joke in music. And I already referred to it once, 1-4-1-5-1. And a lot of times they refer to that as kind of the Nashville idea. You're not writing keys, you're writing positions. 1 is the root chord, 4 is the fourth chord, 5 is the fifth chord. So C, F, G. And the funny thing is one of the most famous progressions, one of the most common progressions is 1-5-6-4. For those of you that have kind of a musical background, this will make sense. For those of you that don't, humor me. 1-5-6-4. And if you wanted to, you could actually get on YouTube right now and you could search for 40 songs in 4 minutes. And you would find this video where these guys play 40 songs that all use 1-5-6-4, all the exact same chord progression. And it's 40 songs that you will immediately recognize that all use the exact same progression. What's different is the melody, and it might even be the timing of it, but they're all the same progression. And we're sitting there working on a song that's 1-5-6-4. And we're trying to figure out how we change it, how we differentiate it, how we alter it. And all of a sudden I had this realization, and I made this suggestion in the room, and I was like, hey, we can switch out this chord and we can make it a flat 9. And for those of you that are not musical, I may have just lost you entirely. But a flat 9 is kind of just out of left field. And you know how I knew that you could do the flat 9? Remember those scales and cadences that I talked to you about that I started doing at 4? It was at that moment in that room that I realized why I was doing that. Because what it was doing is it was sharpening a skill that I had no idea that it was sharpening. It was sharpening an ability that I had no idea that it was developing. And it gave me a tool that I had no idea that I had. And ironically enough, was unusual in the rooms that I was in. It wasn't because I was more talented than anybody else. It's because I had done some things that they hadn't done. And it gave me an advantage that they didn't have. And there were other people that had those advantages. I'm not saying that I was unique in the universe. I was saying that this made me unique in many rooms as a writer. I had this catalog, this background of theory that helped me to connect some dots that everybody in the room couldn't connect. And that was grown from that long middle. That was groomed and developed and honed by that long middle. And when I sat in a room where everybody reached for 1-5-6-4 and I threw out the flat 9 and it changed the entire texture of that song, I knew where it came from. And it wasn't talent. It wasn't instinct. It wasn't instinct. It was not a mysterious creative gift. It was scales and cadences played hundreds of times with my kitchen timer running. And it was preparation I'd forgotten I'd made. Atlanta was the moment. And after that, it opened up this avalanche of realization. I honed in on the fact that I had a skill that was different than many. I had acquired through muscle memory and repetition and preparation, something that made me unique in a variety of those rooms. And once I knew to pull at that thread, I kept finding it everywhere. It was the thin red line connecting a 4-year-old at a piano to every room that I've been in since. And it was the tremendous value. It highlighted the tremendous value of that long middle. It was the thing that was quietly being built in me that I didn't even realize was there. But there's also this reality of human nature. And we are drawn to the visible moments. We're drawn to the session. We're drawn to the stage. We're drawn to the breakthrough. And those are the stories. And that's the story here. It's the payoff. sitting in a room with songwriters in Atlanta, Georgia. It was my arrival as somebody who felt like, for a moment, I felt like I belonged in that room. We find those and call them the story. That's the payoff, but it undervalues the setup. The setup was the kitchen timer. The setup was the scales and cadences. The setup was the boring part that had tremendous unseen value. So we don't tell stories about kitchen timers. We tell stories about stages and crowds and songs and album sales. That's undervaluing the setup. I have this really good friend, Joshua, who is a fascinating person. Joshua is arguably one of the best cellists in the entire world. Again, another kid from Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. And I've known him since he was in middle school. And he is a soloist that travels all over the world, lives in New York City, travels all over the world, playing with orchestras, writing songs, writing all of this really beautiful stuff, performing all this really beautiful stuff, doing his TED Talks and playing at Carnegie Hall and playing at anywhere and everywhere that is worth referencing. And I can remember when Joshua was like probably 17, he said this really ridiculous thing to me. He told me once that Saturdays are his favorite day. And I was like, because it's a break? And he said, no, on Saturdays I can practice for 18 hours. Even today, that feels ridiculous. He said, on Saturdays I can practice for 18 hours. And he said, did you know that after 12 to 14 hours, you can actually feel yourself getting better? When he told me that, I wasn't sure if I should be impressed or concerned. I wasn't sure if I should call somebody to get him checked out. But there's this little beautiful thing in that he saw the value in the middle part. And the truth is, it's why he is one of the best in the world today. And it's because Joshua wasn't enduring the work. He's chasing it. He's chasing the scales. He's chasing the cadences. He has a completely different relationship with all these things. He sees that long middle and he sees it in its right place. And the truth is, it's not just Joshua. Some of the best songwriters in the world, some of the best songwriters that I know, some of the greatest songwriters that I know write constantly. Not only do they write constantly, but they'll write a song a day. Like, that is their expectations. There's one guy in particular that I'm thinking of. He talks openly. He writes a song every day. And when he writes a song every day, he knows that many of those songs will never see the light of day. But he wants to hone his craft. He wants to hone what he's doing. He wants to give himself to it deliberately. He wants to practice. He's setting that little white kitchen timer and he's developing his craft, because the ritual builds skill, the routine builds recognition, and the repetition builds the muscle. And I want you to think about this, because for those songwriters, the song that makes it to the record isn't the miracle. It's just the survivor of 1,000 songs that didn't. My best friend Jared, when he started his business a few years ago, I said something to him and I really meant it. I told him, I said, this is a great idea, but it's also not the best idea you'll ever have. And he was like, I'm not sure how to feel about that. I told him, I said, that's an encouragement, because he's one of those people that ideas just flow out of him. He's wildly creative. He's so very talented, and he just exudes all of that stuff. And this idea that he had for this company was the survivor of 1,000 ideas that didn't. And I knew that he would have 1,000 more, because he's doing the long middle work. So I want to talk to two people for a second. I want to talk to the person in the boring middle right now. You've gotten past the moment of starting. You've gotten past the moment of excitement and energy and engagement, and you feel like you're not sure because you're having to do the boring middle. And I'm not saying the boring middle works out 100% of the time. Don't get me wrong. None of this is prescriptive, but I will say this. Every great idea has a boring middle. Every great idea has a boring middle. And if we can look at it, if we can look at the hard stuff, if we can look at the boring stuff, if we can look at the mundane stuff and still see something beautiful. Because even when I was doing the boring middle with scales and cadences, there were still lots of things that I really loved, lots of things I really enjoyed, but I never knew it would put me on stage in front of an audience. I didn't know the ultimate outcome of it all, but I knew I needed to press through the boring middle. I needed to embrace the boring middle, because I hoped, and I wasn't sure, and I often doubted, but the boring middle was building something in. The second person I want to talk to is about the founder just starting. And for the founder just starting, it's easy to look for the shortcut to Atlanta. You want to get to Atlanta because Atlanta in the room with the songwriters making the recommendation. That is the payoff. But there is no payoff without the setup. I've said it a million different ways, maybe too many different ways, maybe too many different times, but I've talked about the idea of arrival. None of us just show up fully formed. And for those of you that are just starting and you have the big idea, I'm telling you now that there will be a boring middle. The room is real, but the only way into that room, into that goal, runs right through the kitchen timer. Because I know this. I know this about me. I haven't ever recognized the value of preparation while I'm in it. There's moments where I talk myself into it being necessary, but it's really hard for me to really value it, really appreciate it while I'm in it. It only becomes visible from the other side. And that preparation lands farther back than we realize. It may land for you at 4 years old. It may be a thing that you started before you realized you were actually starting. I had no idea that I was building into a career, that I had no idea that I was building into a way that I would engage with the world. I had no idea that I was preparing for the things that I was preparing that would take me to 49 states and 38 countries. I had no idea what was happening and what was being built inside of me in the long middle. I couldn't have known. But I'm realizing now that all those years ago, the timer was doing its work. I'll see you next week.